Installment of our spotlight on cooking and wine and food this cruise, and we have two guest chefs, both gentlemen from down under, Mr. Vic Cherikoff, Chef Vic, and we have Benjamin Christie, Chef Benjamin, and both of these gentlemen are co-hosts of the Australian cooking show called Dining Down Under. And I know that Vic has been showing you some of the seasoning. This is his own range of seasoning that he has launched, and along with their books. I believe you have books on board, gentlemen. Right, the books are actually in the boutique if anybody's interested, and I think if you ask the gents really nicely, tomorrow they'll be doing a second cooking demonstration right back here at 2 o'clock. Possibly they can sign those for you, make them worth just a little bit more money. Also, all the dishes that you'll be seeing prepared today and of course at tomorrow's cooking demonstration will be on the Compass Rose menu tomorrow evening. So not only will you get to see how it's prepared, but you'll get to taste the delights of these two very talented gentlemen. So ladies and gents, without further ado, Chef Benjamin and Chef Vic, welcome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Well, sorry, go for it. I'll go. I'm going to start with the barramundi today. Barramundi is an interesting fish. We picked this up in Cairns the other day from a guy called Max Paticini, and he makes a fabulous cold smoked barramundi. It's cryovac. Is he exporting it yet? Do you know?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I don't believe so.
He does a few different versions. This one is just plain, and what I've done is I've just sprinkled some of the lemon myrtle over the top. He also does one with green ants, which is a fabulous addition to barramundi. We had some green ants in Cairns and Cooktown the other day, and we were grabbing them out of the nests and just eating them wild. It's fantastic. But they have a great citrus lime flavour, and I thought that would pair very, very well with the barramundi, but unfortunately, due to quarantine and all those kind of things, we can't get them on board. So
it probably would have worked really well in a vodka cocktail too. If you could keep them in the glass long enough to get the vodka on top, it would probably work.
Yeah, for sure. So what I thought I'd do is, this is a really simple dish. It'll be the cold starter tomorrow night. I thought I'd show you how to make mayonnaise and use some of the lemon myrtle we were just talking about a few moments ago, and use some of the wild limes. So does anyone know how to make mayonnaise?
In the supermarket, that's a good way. So the way you make mayonnaise is just... Yeah. Well, you can actually use that if you don't want to make your own. You can certainly use store-bought mayonnaise and then put all the additives in there as well. Some of the flavours that went around, things like wildfire spice would make a great mayonnaise. Certainly the lemon myrtle sprinkle.
So the basic mayonnaise is like hollandaise. Everyone knows how to make hollandaise. It's a cold emulsion sauce using egg yolks. So I'll just grab these egg yolks out. And cold emulsion basically means that it gets, well, a bit of white in there as well. Cold emulsion is basically a suspension of yolks with some sort of oil or fat. So hollandaise is egg yolks warmed with butter, clarified butter. But a mayonnaise is a cold emulsion with just oil. Now, you can use all different types of oils. I'm not a big fan of olive oil, so I wouldn't recommend using that. Today I'm just using straight vegetable oil, but you could use macadamia nut oil, sunflower oil, cottonseed oil, any of those kind of oils. You'll have to bear with me while I get this going. So all we're doing is we're whipping the yolks till they become creamy. Now, if you don't have a blender, you could do it with a whisk and bowl, but it becomes quite a bit of a long process. So it's started to whisk up already. I'm going to add some mustard in here. Just Dijon mustard. You don't want to overpower any of the subtle flavours that we're adding in later. So I'll continue this on now. And that just comes to help bind the yolks together. And once that's started to become creamy, I know it's hard to see.
It's impossible to see.
It's true. It's getting there. one of these things that you wonder if it's actually going to happen sometimes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not coming together at the moment.
It really wants you to put it into the bowl and whisk it, mate.
Yeah, I know you'd say that.
Either that, or we could always go and get some store-bought stuff.
Always the way.
Bit of a whirl and then it'll start again. It's probably the volume.
So, all you want to do is, once it starts to come together, is just slowly pour oil in there.
I'll stand over here so I don't get oil splashed all over me.
I'm just going to make sure it's actually coming together. And once it starts to come together, I'm making a complete mess here now. It'll start to thicken up, hopefully. If not, we're in a bit of trouble.
The great thing about making your own mayonnaise is that you can use some really interesting oils, things like walnut oil, pumpkin seed oil. Use some really rich flavours in there. I mean, neither of us uses olive oil a great deal because we think it tends to taste like cut grass, and it's not something that you sort of think of as food. But there's certainly a trend of using olive oil, and some people actually really like olive oil, like my wife. But if you want to try olive oil, it's best to try some that doesn't have too much of a full rounded, peppery, grassy note, because you're not going to be able to overpower that flavour with anything. So if you wanted just an olive oil mayonnaise, just go for that flavour.
Okay. While you were talking, we started to thicken up. And I'll shortly... Now, with mayonnaise, as it starts to thicken up, and you'll see it's sort of quite thick now, you want to add a bit of vinegar, which will thin it down slightly and give you that acid flavour. We're going to be adding a bit of acid flavour with the wild limes a bit further, but I just want to get the mayonnaise thickened a bit more before I add that in.
And the other thing is, what Benjamin's going to use for the wild lime is actually another product which we sell online, which are slices of a rainforest creek lime. Now, you know, with most limes, if you get the Tahitian lime, the common lime, the Indian lime, you can't eat the skin because it's really, really bitter. The thing with the Australian indigenous limes, well, at least the round lime and the desert lime, and I'll show you that in a minute, these you can eat the skin and all. And they are intensely lime flavour, but no bitterness. Does anybody know if, just exploring some of the flavours and some of the attributes of food, let alone the indigenous ingredients and the Australian twist to what we're doing, but in terms of food, there are 7 basic tastes. And it's always worth sort of understanding what they are and the balance and interaction between them, because if you can inject those into any dish, no matter what you cook, whether it's melting pot fusion, confusion, or a dedicated ethnic cuisine, as long as it has some inclusion of a well-balanced mix of the 7 flavours, you're going to end up with a fantastic dish. Anyone know what they are? Salt? Sour? Sweet? Bitter? What about herbs? How would you describe herbs or herbs? Herbs that you put into hot food. How about aromatic? Aromatic? What about spices? Pungent, maybe? Good description for spices. And then there's another one which actually is described either by a Japanese term being umami or a scientific term being Maillard. And Maillard products are formed when you grill a steak, for example, high temperature and a reaction between protein and carbohydrate. Right? So in fact, the glycogen in a steak, or for example in a pastry, you might, or piece of bread, for example, there's protein in the wheat and there's carbohydrate in the starch, and at high temperatures you get that nice brown crust. You might be malting barley if you're making a home brew. As you malt barley, you get that same Maillard product. And so Maillard, or umami, are the roasted, toasted, chocolatey, coffee, beer notes that we really, really love. All right, and that's what the Japanese call umami. So if you get all those in balance, you can be almost guaranteed that you're going to get a perfect dish. Think of a Caesar salad, for example. In a Caesar salad, you've got all those tastes, right? In fact, if you cheat yourself on a Caesar salad and throw the anchovy away, you sort of need something else to add a little bit of pungency and a whack of salt to be able to give you, in fact, even some of the aromatics disappears with the anchovy. So you need to replace that one way or another. One of the flavours you could use to replace is a thing we call yakajiri. Have a smell of that as well, which is
goes well in Caesar salad.
A bush tomato mix, and you can actually maybe cook that in with a crouton or fold it through in the dressing, and you can reintroduce those anchovy-like flavours but without the fishiness.
So while Vic was talking, you may have seen me take the mayonnaise out, which luckily thickened up. So I'm just chopping these wild limes at the moment. I've put the syrup aside because I'll show you how to use that later. Just finally chop the lime now, just put it straight in. And we've got some lemon myrtle sprinkle there somewhere.
No, I think you've given it away. Who's got the lemon myrtle sprinkle?
Here, hold on. I've got some here, Vic. Just a pinch. I think I'll put the...
We're good at cricket in Australia.
I think I'll put the exact measurements there, but I just put it just a pinch in.
Oh, okay.
Beat you to it, mate.
What can you do?
So, that's the mayonnaise made. I'd recommend you make it ahead of time because it does take a while for the flavours to go through the mayonnaise, so I'll just put that aside.
That's probably a clue with a lot of the cooking that you do with really good top quality herbs and spices and seasonings. Don't expect the flavour to be instantly delivered to something like a cold mix, whether it's an anglaise, whether it's a mayonnaise, a hollandaise, any type of cold blending. In fact, even with the lemon myrtle sprinkle that's put on this cold fish, it's going to be better tomorrow.
Yeah. In fact, we're doing all the barramundi for tomorrow's menu just after this demonstration today, so we might just explore that, what you're talking about with the sprinkles. We often, when we travel overseas doing events, order salmon from Australia, and then we add our own flavours. So we'll do one with wildfire spice, one with lemon myrtle. So this can be done with smoked salmon, smoked barramundi,
smoked
trout.
You can do it with eel. Anyone eat eel? Yeah, I know that people like Gordon Ramsay are trying to reintroduce eating eel to the English, which is sort of an old tradition that's dropped off. But I mean, there's so many interesting things that you can smoke and then flavour up with these Australian herbs and spices.
So with this barramundi, all I'm going to do is just slice it thinly. Now I don't have a salmon knife with me, so I'm going to just slowly use my chef's knife to get through it. You want to go against the grain and actually cut through a lot of those thick grains of the barramundi. Barramundi can be a tough fish if it's overcooked or sliced incorrectly, so you want to go against the grain and cut through it, and you'll get nice thin slices like that, sort of the transparent.
The exciting thing about so many Australian products like barramundi, like kangaroo meat as well, is that they're actually becoming available around the world. There's more kangaroo meat sold in Russia than anywhere else. They take about 45% of the Australian production of kangaroo. And in the US, barramundi fingerlings are now being shipped to a farm in New Jersey and grown on, and they're grown to about dinner plate size, which is in fact when the Aborigines regarded the barramundi as perfect. They didn't like big fish, they didn't like big tails, they didn't need to tell big tales. Dinner plate was perfect. Now you might think that's strange because they actually didn't have plates, but what can you do? It's about that size.
I mean, even Chef Bernard the other day was saying, I mean, his restaurant's in San Diego, and he was able to get the barramundi now from Australia live, not live, but fresh.
Yep, fresh.
2 days old. So I'm just going to take that barramundi that I cut and start assembling it on the plate. Now, this dish has a whole heap of different flavours through it, and you'll see when I make the final dressing that you create. What we're creating here is sort of like a kaleidoscope of flavours. So we'll just put that on there like that.
So while Benjamin's doing that, let's just talk a little bit more. I mentioned the 7 flavours. Let's talk a little bit about how they interact. Because, I mean, there's things like, if, for example, in this mayonnaise, Benjamin added the vinegar to sour it, but you need to balance that. So we're looking for a little bit of sweetness. And that came from the lime that Benjamin chopped up that rainforest creek lime because this has been cured in sugar. Okay, so it's a confit. So it's a wild lime confit, and that product there, being sweet and basically in about a 50% sugar syrup, is balancing the acid in the from the vinegar in the mayonnaise. So if anything is ever too acid, you add sugar or sweetness. If anything is too sweet, you add acid.
Okay, so I just sliced the apple up. I'm just going to finish off with the dressing. Now most people will think this is a bit of a weird dressing because we don't have any oil in it.
So I made it up.
Well, yeah. Now I just want to make sure I don't get the yolks and the apple juice mixed up because that could be a funny dressing. So this is just straight apple juice, the clear apple juice. Add that in, together with alpine pepper and fruit spice. Now if you make this in advance, the fruit spice might turn the dressing a little bit orange, but gives it a great, not orange, red.
Slightly pink, yeah.
So it'll give it a great colour on the table.
Now these are our food service jars that we've basically just taken from the kitchen. That everything we're using today is also in the collection that you can get in the boutique. So fruit spice is here, alpine pepper is here, the lemon myrtle sprinkle is here, which is often called Oz lemon as well. And
so I'll put the fruit spice in there now, together with the alpine pepper. So you've got fruity flavours with the fruit spice and the apple, and you've also got a little bit of spice with the alpine pepper.
So the fruit spice is actually the basic flavour, the basic ingredient in fruit spice is actually a gum tree leaf or a eucalyptus leaf. But you won't taste eucalyptus as such in here. It's one of the 900 or so eucalypts that, in fact, the fruit spice went around. You smelt it, it tastes of passion fruit and berry. Everybody smelt the fruit spice that went around in the jar? Maybe if we keep those jars moving, they're... Oh.
So, yeah, just to go on what you were saying before, I've added the apple juice and the fruit spice. Just to give a bit of acid, I'll add just a fraction of lemon juice. Not very much, just that acid. Now, if you don't have lemon juice, you could use
lemon aspen juice, because everybody's got lemon aspen in their fridges.
Everybody's got it in their fridge. So,
not in England.
No?
Well, you can actually get, slowly but surely, we're getting the product all over the world.
Every dish should have a little bit of crunch of some sort. The crunch today is coming from some thinly sliced Granny Smith apples, and I'm just going to put that into the dressing there, toss it around, put that onto the top of the barramundi. The Aboriginal people quite often ate their fish and meat and kangaroos with fruits. Some good examples would be kangaroo and quandong, or kangaroo and
bushmallow, cassowary and lemon aspen. Again, lemon aspen is a rainforest fruit from North Queensland. In fact, it grows just north of Cairns, up in the rainforest, it's a brand new citrus. The fruit is actually, again, more closely related to the gum trees than the citrus family, but it's got a brand new, really interesting citrus, which is interesting to me as well, because what we're doing, or what I've been doing for the last 25 years, is introducing these foods that Aborigines use as their sustenance day to day. And don't forget that Australia, which is about the same size as North America, had about 600 different Aboriginal nations. And each one would have a collection of foods varying between 150 foods and 650 foods, depending on where they lived. So in the desert, you're looking at the lower end. Up in the tropics, particularly the islands, Groot Island for one, which basically we cruise past across the top end of Australia, 650 different Aboriginal sources of nutrition.
So I just grabbed the lettuce, the mixed lettuce. You can use any type of lettuce you want. I've just got some mesclun here. We'll just put that on top of the apple. Now the beauty of using a non-oil based dressing is you can make it well in advance, put it in the fridge, and it still won't wilt. If you use anything with oil, it wilts the lettuce, so it actually becomes soggy. That's why you'll see quite often on salad buffets and things like that, when the chefs have used something like a Caesar dressing, which is full of oil of some sort, it all wilts down. By using a fruit juice based dressing, there's no wilting, and it actually looks fresh and looks shiny continually for quite some time.
It's also a great way to get herbs and spices and these seasonings to actually stick to the lettuce. Just a little bit of fruit juice, and you can. I mean, this original dressing I made with underripe strawberries. Why? Because that's all I could get at the time. A bit of apple juice to extend it. A whole dollop of alpine pepper, which is that really interesting spice that has a woody note to it, and then some strong aromatics, and then a late burn that comes through about 30 seconds to 60 seconds later, and sort of gets you at the back of the throat. But it's a very pleasant burn. Interestingly, the compound that gives you that burn is also it's found in another plant. The compound is called polygodiol. It doesn't matter what it's called, but that polygodiol is actually also common in a European folk medicine to treat arthritis. So we've now got effectively, every time we sort of look more closely at these food spices, these food seasonings, we discover more medicinal effects. Things like the wattleseed is anti-diabetic. The fruit spice is actually anti-cancer, largely in treating bowel cancer, and that's largely because of the cinnamates in the compound that go through a metabolic process that actually inhibits cancer of the bowel. So the more we eat the herbs, the spices, and the less that they're sort of mucked around with in the way they're grown, and we're really eating wild types, we end up with all these beneficial effects as well.
So you may have seen a piping bag. These are sort of clever sort of piping bags in the fact that they're disposable, and you don't have one smelling quite obnoxious for a couple of years around the house.
In the bottom drawer of your cupboard.
Yeah. And you can actually use these to put your traditional piping tubes into at the beginning, so you can get those actual patterns if you're using cream or things like that. So I've just put that around the edge of the barramundi. I'm going to finish it off with some of the small desert limes. They're sultana sized, and these are, would you call them the baby desert lime, different variety?
Yeah, totally. This is a rainforest creek lime, as I mentioned before, and let me just grab one of those. This, by comparison, is the entire fruit. Okay, so this is a desert lime, and obviously in the desert water's at quite a premium. And so this plant, which as it grows tends to look a little bit like a cypress pine, throws thousands of these tiny little fruits. Now this has actually just been reclassified as a brand new citrus. So this is called Citrus glauca, and glauca means dry, and so we have a dry citrus. The thing is that when you pop this in your mouth, there's just this explosion of juice, and the skin is probably only about 1/8 of an inch thick, very, very thin. In fact, even less. And so again, you eat the whole lot. And the seeds and all are quite soft and not very numerous. So here's a lime which is now getting into cultivation, grown organically. All these are grown organically now because no chemical has been approved to basically complement these. In Australia, if you grow a cabbage, you're only allowed to use a certain number of chemicals. In fact, you have to, unless your class is organic, be using a particular certified poison on top of the cabbage leaf, and that's why many farmers and producers are going towards organic methods.
So just to finish off the barramundi, I just put 3 of those half wild limes on the plate. Now whenever you're putting something on a plate, you should keep it odd, otherwise it looks unbalanced. It's a sort of number one lesson at chef school. So I put just 3 halves on there, and
I'm saying most chefs are unbalanced.
Yeah, well that's true.
That's probably right, isn't it?
It's definitely true. And just to finish it off, I'm just going to put some of the syrup on there to give it that extra dimension. And it's a really easy dish for summer. Part of the sort of brief this trip was to keep the dishes light and easy because of the tropics and not anything too heavy, so I think we've achieved it with that dish.
It's great. So you could, as Benjamin said, replace the smoked barramundi with all sorts of things, from even smoked eel,
halibut,
smoked salmon, ocean trout, whatever, because the smokiness adds that extra dimension that is again a sort of a considered element of that.
So that's barramundi, cold smoked barramundi with microgreens and lemon myrtle mayonnaise. Thank you. How are you doing, mate?
I'm going to do dessert.
Okay.
I like desserts.
I saw it at lunchtime.
Let me just go back a little bit and just finish what we were saying about flavours, so that perhaps, yeah, we've actually got the engineers coming to try and turn the air conditioning on, or some such. It's pretty hot in here, sorry. The really interesting thing from a scientist's point of view in terms of teaching chefs cuisine is to really get across the concepts of flavour. And if you can understand that sweet and sour complement each other and balance each other, what if something is too salty?
Start again.
All right, what if something's too bitter?
Sugar.
Yeah, salt. Okay, I mean, you know, the eggplant or aubergines, often if you buy them, they're quite large, a little bit older, they can be bitter. And so they're normally sliced and salted. The salt does two things. First off, it pushes water out, and often with the water goes the bitterness. The bitterness is from solanine alkaloids, which are these bitter principles that basically warn animals not to eat certain things. But this is one, as in tomatoes and potatoes, it's not too noxious, and so we can eat it. But we're warned about just how toxic it can be. So a green aubergine is an absolute no-no. It'll be so bitter you can't eat it. So in a way, it's warning animals only to eat the right fruit. So if something is like the aubergine, we've sliced it, we've put salt on it to get some of the water out, so that then when we grill it, it's not going to boil in the slices, it's going to grill nicely, form those Maillard products as it browns, gives it a bit more roundness on the palate. But the other thing is, by losing some of the water and simply putting salt on the tissues of the eggplant, on that slice of eggplant, you're going to start to balance out the salt and the bitter on the palate. In actual fact, you can try this. If you get a piece of eggplant which is quite bitter, salt it and let it stand a little while, and then taste that. Then get another piece that you've salted, wash it, and then taste it. You'll find the bitterness is still there. You're not destroying the bitterness, you're not getting rid of the bitterness, you're actually masking it with salt.
It's also a good trick because Australians don't really like North American coffee. So sometimes if you get coffee you think is a bit too bitter, just add a few drops of salt to make it a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, and that again is because in America they tend to flash roast coffee. As you flash roast coffee, all your aromatics go up the chimney, whereas in Australia we tend to try and keep the aromatics in the coffee, and the temperature goes way too high, and a lot of the protein and carbohydrate, the Maillard products, tend to go to burnt. Burnt coffee tastes bitter, and literally it's 2 grains of salt in a coffee cup to give you a balance. Because, I mean, you can get into the science of it again, and there's a difference in sensitivity as to, we are very, very sensitive to bitterness because it preserves us when we're foraging as free-ranging Homo sapiens in the jungles of the world, and basically relying on our senses to work out whether something's edible or not. So we are equipped to be able to detect very, very low levels of bitterness. Salt is fairly rare in the environment anyway, and we're fairly we're fairly sensitive. In fact, it's still about 1/10 of the sensitivity to salt as bitter. Sweet, we all love sweetness, and we need a lot of sweetness to detect it. We're fairly insensitive to sweetness. And sourness is actually pretty close to the saltiness of food. But anyway, knowing that we can balance those 2 pairs, sweet and sour, salt and bitter, lets us start to introduce flavours into a dish which start to round it out. If we can then add aromatics and pungency, as in this dish here that Benjamin's made, plus the Maillard. Well, the Maillard here is sort of coming from the smoke, primarily. And so you are getting some very simple Maillard products there. I mean, think of a steak. A steak, when you eat it raw in tartare or carpaccio form, has 3 flavours. You'll taste a bit of iron,
Mustard.
You'll taste protein, and you'll taste a little bit of salt, or a little bit of blood, in fact. They're the 3 flavours in raw steak. You then put it on a barbecue and grill it. The Maillard products number about 450. So you can actually start building up all these different flavours, and all the complexity of a grilled steak come from these Maillard products. And the other thing, as Benjamin mentioned, the texture. is so important with the dish. And so if you can get something that's creamy, something that's crunchy, something that's fairly firm, something that's a little bit softer, this is actually starting to firm up as almost a perfect dish in terms of those parameters. Oh, sorry, what else could I expect? So we have Maillard products. We have the sweet, sour, salt and bitter. And even though I didn't see you add salt to the mayonnaise.
I didn't add any salt to the mayonnaise.
You could have even, but you know, again, the barramundi is a seawater fish, so it's already got its inherent saltiness. So yeah, perfect dish. I'll start with the pavlova, and we can say a little bit more about a few things as we go. Now, the pavlova, you have the recipe in front of you. It's really easy. It's like an Italian meringue. So it's egg white. There's some corn flour in it to start building up a bit of structure so that it doesn't drop too much. There's some tartaric acid or lemon juice in there, and that's designed to keep the meringue soft, because if I baked this without those ingredients, if it was simply egg white and sugar, it would go crusty hard like an ordinary meringue. But the Italian meringue has a softer finish.
Some people may see the pavlova in the supermarkets, it looks like a cow pat. The history of the pavlova is argued between New Zealanders and Australians. The Australian version is that it was made at the Fremantle Hotel by a chef there.
Outside of Perth.
Yeah, just outside of Perth for Anna Pavlova. Someone in Auckland says a very similar story, but out of one of the hotels there. So.
And the thing is that the ballerina Pavlova actually visited Australia and then New Zealand.
Yeah, first. So
it's amazing how things happen in the
Australian version first. Yeah. We've now done this dish in what, 20 countries plus?
At least.
And it is a really unique way of making a dish more interesting than just straight the hard meringue.
So this meringue has been baked in a low oven. So that's 150 degrees Celsius, which is what, about 325 or so Fahrenheit, I guess. And yeah, Google the conversion quick, mate.
No, I thought we might have put it there, but we didn't.
But after about 10 to 15 minutes, the easiest way to check that it's done is just drag it out of the oven a little bit and touch it to see that the tackiness is gone. It'll still be soft and it'll still appear to be raw, but as long as it no longer sticks and comes away to your finger, it's done. If you start getting a bit of colour, well, you should have taken it out a few minutes ago. And if you are called away or whatever and you just miss it and it starts to caramelise on the top, we don't need those Maillard products. We're going to make our own Maillard products in the cream. So we need to be able to roll the pavlova. So if it started to go caramelised already, it could crack as you roll it. So the easiest thing to do is wet a towel and once you've cooled the pavlova, put the wet towel on top, dissolve the sugar a little bit, and then you'll be able to carry on. Once you take the towel away, I've put either a biscuit, a Graham biscuit crumb. This one actually happens to be
a combo of the breakfast meal,
puffed wheat and cornflakes. Now again, I
How
like
did you
to add,
process it this morning?
yeah, these come in a very convenient processor. You just bash the bag and it comes out of the box. It's terrific. Now I like to add flavours to the crust. It's actually not in the recipe, but it just sort of goes on the fact that I've never followed a recipe in my life. So I've added a little bit of lemon myrtle into here. You could add quite an array of sweet flavours. And this now, having been baked on a piece of paper, is ready to hopefully, oops, this is about the hardest part of the whole dessert, when you flip it over and you don't make too much of a mess of it. And if it's, I use baking paper or silicone paper, and I still spray it with a little bit of canola oil or sort of oil spray just to make sure that it doesn't stick once it's baked. But you can then peel it off. If, by the way, it does stick and it starts to break the pavlova up, you can always wet a towel, put that in the microwave, or just get really hot water, boiled water over the towel, squeeze it out, wring it, and then with the hot towel, put the hot towel on top again, just wait for it to melt a little bit of the sugar, whip it away, and then you'll be able to strip the, continue taking the paper off with no ill effects to the pavlova.
This is a good way to use up the egg yolks, egg whites that we
from the mayonnaise. Yeah. Okay, so perfect. The other great thing about this is if you do tear holes in it or make a bit of a mess with the removal of that, it's sort of like knocking a hole in the wall of your house. You can always sort of fill it up with a bit of filler. We're going to use cream to fill it, so if it is broken a little bit, you can always make some running repairs. Now, I won't flavour up all this cream because we actually have an interesting time with cream here. Cream that was unloaded in Singapore, interestingly said whipping cream, so the chefs immediately thought this cream is going to be great for whipping, but it's not.
Quite often in Asia, I spend a lot of time working in Asia, and they don't actually use cream in their cream. What it is, it's milk with gelatin and things like that. So when you're in Asia, you need to make sure you pick up cream. And we had a look at the packet today, and in big letters it says whipping cream. And you turn it around, it says, I couldn't see cream in it at all. So you've got to be careful. So at the moment, don't tell anyone that there's no cream on board.
Well, what we've done here is our synthetic cream. It's been whipped and set with a bit of gelatin, so I can't work this too much, otherwise the gelatinous structure is going to break down. But enough to say we're going to now flavour this with a little bit of, I hope this is going to work, with Wattleseed essence or extract.
So what that is you know what vanilla essence is, so it's very similar to that, but we've made it from the Wattleseed powder. If it's here somewhere.
It's already on the rounds, or doing the rounds.
So if you don't have any of the extract, you can actually just get some of the grounds, boil them up for about 3 or 4 minutes, let it sit, and then strain off the Wattleseed. You can actually let some of the Wattleseed go through and give it a bit more crunch. It does soften down after a few minutes in water, and that's all it is. No artificial colours or preservatives added.
So the colour you want is sort of just a pale tan. It's really interesting travelling the world and talking to different cultures. You sort of go into America and you say, I'll have a white coffee, please. And people think, you what? All our coffee's brown. You know, sorry about that. What do you want, a white coffee? Well, in Australia, we would call that as, you know, coffee with cream, effectively, is a white coffee. So you want to make it white coffee coloured, or coffee with cream. It's just a tan, a light tan. And you notice that I've lost a little bit of the firmness of my cream, and I can't put it back from whipping. So we'll see how this goes. I won't make it too thick. And just like laying some tiled floors, you look like a handyman. No, you like? No, that's all right. He's handy because he's just here. And you literally just spread it to about the same thickness as the pavlova itself. I'll see if I can take all that off.
Now this pavlova tomorrow night will be served in a dessert antipasto. We wanted to give everyone the opportunity to try the flavours in 2 or 3 different desserts. So we're doing a creme brulee with quandong, the Wattleseed Pavlova, and a wild lime tart, which is the same limes I'm using on here. And all the flavours, I mean, you know, you'd see something like this in a fine dining restaurant. You'd see the pavlova in a fine dining restaurant, and sometimes people are a bit apprehensive to try the flavours, but these are being used by chefs all over the world. I mean, we've used them in events in Russia. We've used them to take second place at the clam chowder cooking competition in Newport. These are flavours that are really starting to be used by chefs and consumers around the world. And we've tried to give you a menu tomorrow night that allows you to try a whole heap of different flavours all at the same time. So definitely go to the degustation menu tomorrow night.
So from here, what I neglected to say is I've actually flipped this onto a cloth or a tea towel. You can use more baking paper if you wish. I just find the cloth is really makes it easier to roll, and from here, again the trick is just to start the pav rolling rather than sticking to the tea towel. Let's go. With the cream not as thick as I'd like, it's still going.
So you want to get it something that looks like a Swiss roll, don't you, mate?
Swiss roll. Now you can actually roll that in silicone paper again and just keep it tight. In fact, we might even, so if it's in paper, or even put this on to a piece of paper, what we're going to do, I think, is actually chill this one, so it might even be ready to eat tomorrow. But once you've done, you can transfer it, roll it, put it on a platter. Now we're going to take a slice out of this while we, to serve it up and finish it. But before I do, we need a fruit garnish, and we need a little bit of decoration. So we've painted the plate with a bit of chocolate piping, and what I want to do here is make up a little bit of a coulis. So you notice from the recipe that the chefs always take the ends. It's just a matter of tradition, yeah.
You can't serve the ends.
You can't serve the ends, so somebody's got to have it. But again, the wattle seed cream will strengthen overnight with flavour, and also the important thing is that for some reason, did I talk much about wattle seed? I didn't, did I? Wattle seed are, has everybody smelt it? It's got that coffee, chocolate, hazelnut flavour. It's coming around there. It was developed, it was actually a pure accident. A lot of things happen in this world totally by accident, and then end up one of the best things around. And what I was doing a nutritional program analysing native foods, Aboriginal foods.